I didn't know how to present myself. I didn't know how to talk to property owners. Like, it took me 9 months to get my first co-host deal. But if I was starting over now, I would focus on dominating 1 or 2 markets and become the go-to person for that market. And I had to leave my baby and my wife in the hospital to go back to a desk and trade time for money. And I was just so pissed at myself for putting my family in that situation. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna build us a business that gives us the income we want without ever trading time for money again.
Guys, here we are again, another interview before our meetup. I'm here with Mike Jorgen, STR, short-term rentals expert that we brought in to help us today. Mike, thanks for coming.
My pleasure, I'm glad to be here.
So I just prepared a few questions based on what stuff we're gonna probably talk about in a little bit in the meetup, but just so we can have people that can't attend and get some things going here. I know you talk about financial freedom. It's, obviously a big thing with real estate in general, but STR as well. What does it mean to you exactly, like financial freedom? What is that?
To me, it's all about time freedom, right? So being able to fund the lifestyle that I want to have, do what I want to do with who I want to do it with without having to trade time for money. At the end of the day, there's a lot of ways to make money in real estate, and they all work if you stay persistent and you stay focused. But what I really wanted to focus on was creating a business that had systems and people, so I wasn't trading time for dollars anymore. So to me, if I'm working less than 4 hours a week on a business, to me that's pretty passive and I have time freedom.
And I'm sure people have different views of what it is, but I just wanted to get it from you. Obviously, time is a big thing, for sure. That being said, I was on the live that you had the other day. I even, poked to you a little bit and saying that I was excited for you to be here. And you were talking about that this time of STR, and a lot of people are saying like in the media that Airbnb is dying or whatever, it's just too much or whatever. And I know you mentioned something in there that was about like this is actually a good moment, or the gold rush, I think you call it, right? Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that tonight quite a bit, and I've got some graphs and some data to show this stuff. But since COVID, really, from mid-2020 through 2022, interest rates were low. There was so much pent-up demand for travel. I'm going to be curious when I ask people in there, but I felt like everybody and their mother was buying an Airbnb, right? And when times are good and there's a lot of demand, everybody looks like a genius, right? And everybody's doing great. Now the market has normalized. Everybody was calling it the Airbnb bust. In reality, and I'll show the numbers in there, it's just normalized and it's still above 2019 levels. And so the challenge is now you actually have to know what you're doing and understand pricing strategies and revenue management and guest communication and how to drive like traffic to your property, right? So you have to know how to run the business now. It's like being an investor in the stock market. When the market's going up, everybody looks like a genius. Can you make money when it's leveled out or even when it's going down, right? So it's leveled the playing field, but the big opportunity right now, yes, you can still go out and buy properties. There's always deals. There's always deals. But right now, there's a huge opportunity to come in and co-host for a lot of those people that bought properties over the last couple of years that didn't really, I don't want to talk smack about them, but they didn't really know what they were doing, right? And they got used to just making some good money. And now they're like, what is going on? I don't know how to fix this. They're not making as much. Maybe they can't even afford the bills and they're bleeding money every month, but they can't sell it because interest rates are up and they're just stuck, right? So there's a huge opportunity for people that, are experienced co-hosts that know how to drive revenue to a property to come in and basically save those people, take over the operations of it, drive the revenue management of it, get their revenue up, make them more money, and take a piece of the action as a co-host. So there's over 500,000 properties that launched in the US between 2021, mid-2020 to 2023. 500,000. So it increased by like 50%. It's crazy. Wow. It was a huge surge. Demand was still up, but I think it's down. There was like a delta of about 5%. So demand was down 5% or whatever. So there's a little gap now. But if you know what you're doing and you know how to stand out, the top hosts are still making a bunch of money, and there's an opportunity to help a lot of those people that are struggling.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I never thought of that way. It's like kind of like on the real estate side with the realtors and agents, right? Like when everything was going great, you had so many like people like quitting their jobs, becoming a realtor. And now that's like not as easy.
Yeah. Show me you could sell a house in a down market. Like, let's see what you got.
That's right. That's right. And that's when the professionals come in and like take over. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a good view. I like that. With other things I was going to ask you is now, obviously you're professional at this, you know what you're doing and you teach people and all that stuff, right? Knowing what you know now, like what would you have done in the beginning different?
So at the beginning, I mean, I was a CPA for 10 years. So I was really good with numbers, underwriting deals, like all the data side of it. I sucked at sales. Like I didn't know how to present myself. I didn't know how to talk to property owners. Like it took me 9 months to get my first co-host deal. Like 9 months of rejection until I finally like figured out how to present myself well and present, you know, the opportunity well. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but if I was going to do it differently now, I went very wide, very quick. Once I started to get traction, within 15 months, I had 15 properties in 5 different states, from New Hampshire all the way down to Florida and all the way over to Dallas-Fort Worth. So I was very spread out geographically, which is good for diversification in different markets and whatever. But if I was starting over now, I would focus on dominating 1 or 2 markets and become the go-to person for that market. Like somebody like Chris Petsy, who was one of my first students, he's got 80 something properties now. And he just dominates the Seacoast and up in like the North Conway area, like call it Seacoast and Summit. Yeah. Like he just owns those markets and he's the subject matter expert there. So if I'm looking to grow a portfolio, if I'm in trouble, right, I bought a property and I don't know what I'm doing, I'm struggling, who's going to look more attractive? Somebody that's everywhere or somebody that like is niched in that market? Yeah. You know, so that's what I would do differently. I would really zone in on a couple markets that make really good sense for me. Mm-hmm. And I would just niche down on those. It's
kind of like the same thing, what Whiteacre and myself, what we do is like with the flips and all that, right? We're trying to be more targeted because we're doing flips in like Springfield and then we do flips in Boston. And it's like, you know, just to get your crews and all that stuff, like it's so much better to do things like right there. So it's the same idea, which kind of goes in the same thoughts that we have, like doing our stuff.
So the real work is in building a solid team in those markets, really good cleaners, really good contractors, right. Just like in any real estate business. So if I'm gonna put in all that effort to build a great team here, I might as well make it worth the squeeze and just keep plugging properties into that team instead of just having to build 4 or 5 different teams very quickly. That's a lot more stressful.
Makes sense. I picked up on something you just said. So he said it took you 9 months to get your first one. What kept you there? Like, because, you know, a lot of people, you know, goes 1, 2 months, they're like, I'll forget it, this is not for me, and they quit, right?
You got to find a strong why. So for me, I had, and I'll tell this story in there, but basically what really pushed me over the edge was when my son was born, he was born with a very rare lung disease, right? And so we spent a ton of time at Boston Children's Hospital. He had to be on oxygen, do all these crazy tests. Like we'd be there for a month at a time, like just long spans of time. And at a certain point, I ran out of vacation time. I ran out of sick time. I had all these medical bills and I had to leave my baby and my wife in the hospital to go back to a desk and trade time for money. And I was just so pissed at myself for putting my family in that situation that when I left them, I told my wife, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to build us a business that gives us the income we want without ever trading time for money again. And I was just on a mission, man. Awesome. And I knew it was going to be through real estate. I thought it was going to be through multifamily syndication or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then I met a gentleman in a mastermind group that was doing Airbnb in like 2016 before it was huge. And he's like, you know, he was making anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a month on these properties that he didn't even own. And I called BS. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, show me your books. So he showed me his QuickBooks files and I was like, wow, this is crazy, right? And so that was just the fuel that I needed, man. Every time I was getting rejected, it was just like, I am not stopping until I get my wife and myself out of this friggin' job so I can be there for my family. Like, that's it, period. The biggest challenge that most people face is they're comfortable. Comfort will kill your dreams because it's more painful to step out of that comfort zone to go for something. We'll always do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. Mm-hmm. So as much as that whole situation sucked that I went through with my family, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because it catapulted me with this fire that I'm like, I'm not stopping until I'm out of this freaking job.
I wanted to ask you something more like in the beginning stages of somebody that has like nothing, right? I don't own real estate. I never co-hosted. I barely know what Airbnb is, but I want to get into that. Like, what would you say to that person? Like, how to start or what's the first steps to get there?
The first thing is to just get educated. I'm a big proponent of this because when you're co-hosting, somebody's trusting you with their property that they've worked hard to save their money and they've invested in this thing. You got to know what you're doing, right? To me, it's unethical if you don't know what you're doing and you're just running these properties into the ground, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to be a financial advisor or anything else, you got to go through school and get all these certifications and everything else. So make sure that you know what you're doing. So again, I've got a free Facebook group. There's tons of resources out there. I've got a podcast. I'll give people my deal analyzer. I've got free courses I can send to people. It's still an early industry. And honestly, the biggest risk at this point is the lack of consistency in the properties and the way that people operate them. So if I can help people operate better, it's going to legitimize the entire industry, which obviously selfishly benefits me and all the members. So get educated first and then just start telling people about what you're doing. The mistake that I made at the beginning was I was almost afraid to tell people what I was doing because of, oh, well, what if I fail? Or what if my boss finds out? Or whatever. So I kept it all inside, and then I would go to meetups like this and tell a couple people about it. But if I was going to do it again, like, go tell all your family, friends, loved ones. We're coming up on Memorial Day. There's going to be barbecues. There's going to be things going on. Tell people what you're up to. You never know who's got a property that maybe they've been thinking about buying a vacation rental, or maybe they're thinking about retiring, maybe they're thinking about selling a property, maybe you can get some seller financing on it or whatever. Like, the more seeds you plant out there, the more that's going to come back to you, the more opportunities that you're going to attract. So get out there and tell people what you're doing. Get educated, start networking, start with your family, friends, and loved ones. Go to meetups like this, tell people what you're up to, and eventually somebody's going to give you a shot if you persist.
The second question to that, I guess, is, okay, I learned, right? I get some education, maybe basic education, right? Because people, maybe I don't have the money to invest in a full education, so I just got the free courses and the tips and bits here, join your Facebook group and all that. Now I'm starting to tell people, right? But I've never had one, so I get to an appointment, right? This person is like, well, how many do you manage? It's like, none. How do you get through or over that hurdle of like, I never done a deal? Sorry, that might be a tough one.
No, this is good, right? Because there's two ways to go. That's one advantage of if you pay for mentorship or coaching is the students leverage my credibility of like, hey, I'm in an international network of short-term rental operators, really like this area, and they leverage my credibility or the group's credibility. If you don't have that, what I would say is, hey, listen, this is actually my first property that I want to get into in this market. I've educated myself on this, this, and this. Here's all the data on why this makes sense. And if you get pushback on it, it's like, listen, you are going to be my sole focus. You are client number one, and I want to get you a win. So I would do a discounted fee, like a discounted co-hosting fee, or do it for free to get a testimonial, to get a case study, right? Just offer that value. I think everybody wants like the quick money. You need a case study that then you can leverage to go get more and more deals. But I would position it as like, you are my sole focus right now. So I'm going to do everything in my power. And here's the resources that I have and the knowledge that I have to make sure that you win, because you are my number one priority right now. And I won't let you fail.
There we go.
And you got to communicate with conviction and believe that.
Yeah. And I like that, because we tell a lot of people that comes to our meetups, like, you know, aspiring wholesalers that just starting out, whatever, and they want to do it. And like, they just want people to mentor them and all that stuff, but they're not willing to do the free work, or like, you know, let me help you with whatever you need and you teach me type of thing. Kind of like the same idea you're saying, but I like the part where you said, you know, you're my only one focus. And I think I would even go a step further, like, I need to make you succeed so I can get more properties and continue to succeed. So I'm going to do everything I can to kind of get your property to like get to where it needs to be, right? So I love that. That's awesome. Do you have any final thoughts or anything for our audience?
The biggest thing that I'll say, and whether you're a beginner or you're advanced or like an expert, is get clear about what you want, right? I've seen a lot of people build large portfolios and then they end up miserable because they're like, this isn't even what I really wanted, but they never thought about it. They just took a lot of action, which is admirable, good job. But then they're like, man, I don't even like these properties. I don't like these owners. I don't like this location. Get clear about what it is you actually want. You may only need, I'm going to show some numbers tonight. You might only need 4, 5, 6 properties. You can make $100,000 a year with a few properties, quality properties that you actually enjoy. And then you're like, cool. Or maybe you just want to make a few grand a month on the side that you can put your kid in private school or take that vacation that you want to take. Only you know what's right for you. So don't compare yourself to anybody else, but figure out what that thing is that you actually want and make sure that it's motivating enough for you, because it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows, right? People are going to hear me talk and see my story and all this stuff, and it sounds amazing. I've had some rough times going through this. I'm sure you have. Anybody that's gotten to a certain level, Yeah, now they make it look easy or whatever, but you weren't there for those years of grinding and going through tough times or, almost going broke, whatever it is. Like, it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows. So if that why isn't strong enough, you're going to quit. So make sure you're doing this for the right reason and make sure it's motivating enough for you. But think about it. Everybody always says, I want financial freedom. I'm like, cool, what does that even look like? And they're like, well, I don't have a job. I work for myself. Okay, cool. What's your week look like? At the end of the day, our life is an accumulation of our average weeks. And I'm going to talk about this tonight, but I am hyper intentional with how I structure every week. Because I go on trips and we do fun stuff, but at the end of the day, I maximize every week. Like, I optimize my week for doing stuff that I like to do. Yeah. So when you think about when you're financially free, if I wave my magic wand and all of a sudden you've got 10, 20, 30K a month, whatever your number is coming in, and you don't have to work anymore, what do you want to spend your time on? What does your life actually look like? Most people haven't even thought about that. Right. And until you do, it's going to be a pipe dream. Once you start to map it out, it's going to make it more real.
Write it down, vision boards, the whole 9 yards. And to that point, and then so to bring it to the end, and also for you to share a little bit about your program, like how you do your, with your Facebook groups and all that, is being part of groups like yours or masterminds. Like I recently, 6 or 7 months ago, I joined the Better Life group with Brendan Turner. Yeah. It's just been a game changer for me to like track my habits and all that stuff, and having the accountability partners that we meet every week and help each other to keep it accountable, and like that's so important. And I don't know if a lot of people. Yeah, it gets expensive on here and there, but find ones that are not as expensive.
I'm telling you right now, the masterminds are by far the best investments I make. I spend over $100,000 a year on masterminds as a member of a mastermind, right? The reason it's the best is because, like you said, one, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So when I was getting started, I got put in an accountability group in a mastermind. I was the only one that wasn't a millionaire, and I was the only one that wasn't a full-time real estate investor. So one of 2 things happens when you get in that environment. 1, you level up via osmosis, or 2, you leave because you're just massively uncomfortable. Correct. So putting yourself in those environments and then getting coached by people that are at or above the level that you want to get to, it's just the fast lane. It's just the fast lane. So if I learn a skill from somebody, I can replicate that skill over and over and over again. It always pays dividends. I buy a property, cool. That property makes me money every month, but the ROI on a mastermind or a mentor or a coach, whatever, it's infinite because that skill will carry you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. That's the education that you get it to keep forever. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So that being said, I thank you for coming. I want you to tell the group like where they can find you. Instagram. I know you Instagram, Facebook. Give me your names there, and also you can share a little bit about your group, your Facebook group.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. It's at mike.sjogren, SJOGREN. Honestly, the easiest place is the Facebook group. So if you go on Facebook and search Short-Term Rental Secrets, you'll see my face on there with Mike Riley, my COO, and Emmanuel Pani, co-host of my podcast, Short-Term Rental Secrets. We've got over 7,000 members in there. We do live trainings every single week. I've got a free course that I recorded in there. I've got my deal analyzer in there. It's just a way for me to help people get in the game, because that first deal is the scariest. And once you get over that hump, then you really start to build momentum quickly because you start to believe that you can actually do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.
It's awesome to have you here, and I look forward to see you in there in the meetup.
We're going to have some fun.
Yes, we will. Thanks. Appreciate it.